Democrat Joaquin Castro is taking heat for publicly listing and trying to shame Trump contributors. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Rashida Tlaib blasted President Trump with some very misleading comments about guns. We'll look at the real facts, plus we'll learn what the Incredible Hulk thinks about gun control. All that and more. I'm Bobby Eberle. This is a 13-minute news hour.
And God bless the United States of America.
All right, friends, welcome to the show. Happy Wednesday. We've got a lot to cover, so let's dive right in. We're going to start with Joaquin Castro because he's doing what typical leftists do. They'll blast conservatives for whatever they say, saying it's going to incite violence, saying it's hate speech, yet they do the exact same thing. The other day, Joaquin Castro tweeted this. He says, "Sad to see so many San Antonians as 2019 maximum donors to Donald Trump, the owner of Bill Miller Barbecue, owner of Historic Pearl, realtor Phyllis Browning. Their contributions are fueling a campaign of hate that labels Hispanic immigrants as invaders." Then in the tweet, he goes on and lists these 44 people in his area, his district, their names and employers. And you don't think that's going to get people fired up, these left-wing wackos, to maybe do something? Here's a report from the Washington Examiner that goes into it. While the names of these donors are available for discovery through the FEC, many were critical of Castro's tweet as it seemed to specifically target local citizens of his own congressional district. Democrats want to talk about inciting violence? This naming of private citizens and their employers is reckless and irresponsible. He's endangering the safety of people he's supposed to be representing, Trump campaign communications director Tim Murtaugh said in a statement to the Daily Caller News Foundation. He continued, "No one should be targeted for executing their First Amendment rights or for their political beliefs. He should delete the tweet, apologize, and his brother's campaign should disavow it." So as of this morning, the tweet's still there. He's actually done follow-ups saying, take a hike, I'm keeping it, it's no big deal. It's still going on. These people never learn, and the double standards are just incredible. And speaking of that, I want to get to some of the facts that the media and, Democrats like Rashida Tlaib and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are throwing out there for this whole mass shootings thing that's going on, the story that they're trying to represent. And I actually got a question through our, Ask BE segment from Sean Shiddick. He is a longtime watcher of the show, and he just, he's mystified like all of us on what the left is trying to do with the guns. Check this out.
So, left is saying the prayers don't work, and what their solution is cry racism and divide the country, take away our gun rights. That's supposed to work.
So thanks so much, Sean, for the video. Everyone, you can find a link in the description to Ask B if you want to send in your own video questions. Maybe you'll make it on the show. But you're absolutely right. They diminish things or dismiss things like prayer, and they try and do everything they can to chip away at our Second Amendment rights. And they're doing it by twisting facts, making up stuff. And we see it this week. We see it this week in the media. And this is what I want to go over, because the narrative that they're trying to portray is got two main points. One is that all the mass shootings are done by white supremacists. The vast, vast majority are white people, these white supremacists. And the sheer number of mass shootings is gotten out of control. It's absolutely crazy number. That's what they're pitching, and they are wrong on both accounts. Okay, so let's first get into this idea that all mass shooters are white supremacists, that the whites dominate in the mass shooting category. Here's a report from the Washington Times. It says, 7 times this year, a gunman has opened fire in a U.S. public place, killing at least 3 people. One shooter is suspected of being a white supremacist, 1 Elizabeth Warren supporter, 2 were black. Yet fears over rising white nationalist attacks after El Paso massacre threaten to obscure what studies describe as the big picture about mass killings. That they represent a small fraction of annual gun deaths, that they are not surging, and that about half are committed by whites, not a share out of line with the general populace. All right, we're going to go into that more deeply, but here's one thing I wanted to point out: the criteria that they use. Because every time, since I started hearing about mass shootings from Columbine or Sandy Hook or Las Vegas or whatever, there's been a certain criteria, and that is mass shootings are defined as when 3 or more, or maybe 4 or more people are killed by a shooter. That's the definition of mass shootings. That's what they're using here. So keep that in mind. Here's more from the Washington Times. A May 2018 policy brief by the Rockefeller Institute of Government at the State University of New York, which looked at any incident that resulted in deaths or injuries and excluded gun violence or terrorist activity, found the perception that whites are responsible for nearly all mass shootings is a myth. Despite common misconceptions that mass shooters are white, the findings indicate that while a majority are, the proportion is just over half the perpetrators, said the study, noting that almost all were men. More than 1 in 4 shooters is black, and nearly 1 in 10 are of Hispanic descent. Okay, so keep that in mind. 54% in this study, the shooters were white. Okay, whites make up 63% of the population. And in this study, over 25% were black, and blacks make up 13% of the population. So you can see right there that they're skewing the numbers, that one, the number of mass shootings is small, and the number of whites doing the shooting is, it's even less than being in line with the population. So the next thing I wanted to do is the second part of what they're trying to portray, their narrative, and that is the number of mass shootings. All right, I was watching the news the other day, and the guy said there's been 251 mass shootings in the United States so far this year, 2019. And I thought, what? I mean, that's more shootings than there are days we've covered so far this year. So that means there should be a shooting in the news every day. Every day should be news about mass shootings, and I don't hear about them. I don't know if you guys do, but I sure don't. And so that made me dig in, want to learn, where is this number coming from? I've never heard it. So I did a Google search on mass shootings, Wikipedia page. There's a Wikipedia page on it, and sure enough, they list all these shootings, and now it's over 251. And so then I looked at a news story, so-called news story, and they cite the Gun Violence Archive. So I decided to check this out, and this is what I found. Here's a picture of the Gun Violence Archive, and here's the thing, is they use a different criteria. All right, their criteria is if 4 or more people are involved in a shooting, they're injured somehow, but not killed, okay? So that vastly changes the number of incidents, and it vastly changes who's involved. Because right now, again, remember, the Democrats are painting this narrative that almost all the shootings, these 251 mass shootings, and it's all driven by white supremacy. And you see it. You see the tweets out there. Here's a tweet from Rashida Tlaib. She says, and this was in response to Ivanka Trump sending prayers to the victims, said, "Your prayers aren't working. Try checking your dad on his tweets. 251 mass shootings in the U.S. in 216 days. He incites violence every day with his hate agenda and racism. More people are dying because he fails to fight white supremacist terrorists. They are the ones who hate America." So that's Rashida Tlaib. And of course, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez jumped in as well. She said, "Video games aren't causing mass shootings. White supremacy is." Sadly, the GOP refused to acknowledge that because their strategy relies on rallying a white supremacist base. All right, so I decided to look at the data. I dug into this gun archive and this gun violence archive. I downloaded the data for this year and I looked at it. And I did searches on Chicago and Baltimore and cities like that. And I'll put this chart up, and here's what I found. Chicago area, 25 incidents. Baltimore, 10. Atlanta, 5. Houston, 4. LA, 4. Oakland, 3. So when I looked at that, I was like, whoa, because I live in Houston. And this says, according to this, there's been 4 mass shootings just in Houston. And I haven't heard about any of them. I never saw a mass shooting report on CNN or MSNBC or CBS or ABC in Houston. Yet, according to this archive, there's been 4. So then I looked and researched all the 4 shootings, and I'll put this chart up, and here they are. These are the mass shootings in Houston this year. January 19th, home invasion. 5 people enter, and 3 were shot dead by armed homeowner, 2 injured. January 28th, a narcotics bust. Police officers enter home of drug dealers. Suspects shoot 4 police officers. Officers kill 2 drug dealers. February 21st, 2 groups of people get into an argument. 2 days later, they come back to settle things, and a shooter was waiting. 2 men killed, 20-year-old Maximo Aguilar and 18-year-old Jose Aguilar. 2 were injured. 18-year-old Marlon Brandon Valdez was later arrested. July 11th, inner-city Houston apartment complex at 1:30 in the morning. 14 shot in what local media suspect is a gang-related shooting. So again, I didn't hear about any of these, and you're not going to, because when you do criteria like that, you take into account gangs, you take into account inner cities, you take into account drug busts, you take into account domestic stuff. None of those involve white supremacists. Okay, so the left is trying to have this argument, and they can't have it both ways. All right, either the majority of whites are responsible for mass shootings, a very small number of mass shootings, or you have a large number of mass shootings where white supremacy is not the driver. So pick one or the other, but you can't have white supremacists and a million mass shootings. The facts are there that it's 100% wrong, the argument they're doing. You can see the facts right there. And they're trying to spin things out of control using statistics that, again, involve inner cities, inner gangs, domestic disputes, drug busts, things like that. White supremacy is not involved, folks. So there's some information for you so you can take to your friends. So the next segment I want to do, it's a new segment, and it's called, Do They Have a Relaxed Brain? And the reason I'm doing this is because I really don't like just to flat out call people stupid. So I'm taking a cue from Rocky Balboa.
I got what you call, like, I don't know, a relaxed brain.
So yes, these are some relaxed brain moments. And we're going to start with Mark Ruffalo, the Incredible Hulk, who tweeted this out the other day. She says, America is a country that prides itself on freedom, but we can't leave our homes without the thought of possibly being gunned down. Where can anyone go in large groups anymore without fear? All right, that's his start. And then he goes on, he says, you can't go to Walmart, concerts, the movies, schools, public houses, churches, synagogues, mosques, grocery stores, post offices, food festivals, nightclubs, nursing homes. It seems the only safe place in America is airports, and that's because they don't allow guns there. Oh my gosh. I mean, how ridiculous is that? You can't go to nightclubs. They don't allow guns in nightclubs. They don't allow guns in libraries. They don't allow guns in schools. All these places he listed, that's why shooters go there. The stats show shooters love going to gun-free zones. The reason he feels safe in an airport is because there's armed security there, which is exactly what we're trying to do for schools, to arm teachers or get more security to be a deterrent to someone that might go there. So what a ridiculous, ridiculous statement. So then the next one I want to talk about is Victoria's Secret, okay, the lingerie company. You know, they do their runway shows, they've got their catalogs, their stores, and now they've just hired their first dude. That's right, they've hired a guy to model women's lingerie. And here's a report from the Daily Caller. It says, Victoria's Secret hired Brazilian model Valentina Sampaio, its first openly transgender model for an upcoming ad campaign. The 22-year-old model agent, Ariel Zanin, confirmed to CNN in a piece published Monday that the model has been hired by the underwear company for an ad campaign coming out later this month for its pink lingerie line. All right, so again, Victoria's Secret hiring a guy to model women's lingerie. Yeah, that's relaxed brain for sure. And finally, I want to just leave you with San Francisco, all right? They've added new pit stop toilets to their poop patrol. And here's a report. It says Mayor London Breed signed a budget Thursday that includes money for 7 new pit stop bathrooms for a city where a one-night count of homeless people grew 17% in the past 2 years. The toilets each cost an average of $200,000 a year to operate, with most of the money going to staffing and overhead. Mayor Breed last year said a formation of a special 6-person poop patrol team where each cleaner earns more than $70,000 a year. All right, and here's just one little extra bit of information. It says, the condition of San Francisco streets has been a source of embarrassment to city leaders, and cleaning up is not cheap. The city received nearly 27,000 requests for feces removal in the most recent fiscal year, although not all are human. So folks, there's your relaxed brain moments. Think about those today as you go about your job. I hope you enjoyed the show, folks. We're out of time. We actually went a little over, but there was just so much to go into. Please subscribe, and when you do, please hit that bell and tell your friends. and we'll see you on Friday. I'm Bobby Everly. This is the 13-Minute News Hour. Okay, friends, just a little reminder before you go, and no, this does not count against my 13 minutes. Please hit the subscribe button below and tell your friends. And if you happen to miss our last show, you can check it out right here. And also for great conservative news and commentary, please check out GOPUSA.com. All right, folks, we'll see you on the next show. Have a great day.